Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Hoopers Podcast. I am your host, the president of the Hoopers, the headband warrior, Ben Roberts. My guest today is a man by the name of Jeff Buziak. You may remember Jeff from an interview we did with him in 2018 where we discussed the 2008 murder of his daughter Lindsay Buziak. It's a very famous murder case in Canada. In our initial interview with Jeff in 2018, we mainly discussed the theory that Lindsay's boyfriend Jason Zailo was involved in the crime, along with certain members of his family. I highly recommend you go and listen to our 2018 interview we did with Jeff if you want to know the ins and outs of those theories, as well as a better overview of the case than I'm going to give right now, but I'll try and clue you in as much as I can. On February the 2nd, 2008, realtor Lindsay Buziak was telephoned by a woman and asked to show her and her husband a $1 million house in Saanich, British Columbia. She was reportedly disturbed by the accent of the woman who arranged the viewing, and thus asked her boyfriend Jason Zailo to accompany her to the house. However, he arrived late to the viewing, and Lindsay reportedly entered the home with the couple alone. Nearly 30 minutes later, Jason claimed he became worried and rang 911, before eventually gaining access to the house and running upstairs to find that Lindsay had been stabbed to death in the master bedroom. It's reported that she was stabbed more than 40 times in the back. The couple, described in Lindsay's diary as the Mexicans, were nowhere to be seen. The subsequent police investigation concluded that the phone used to arrange the meeting with Lindsay was only activated 24 hours before the murder and was never used for any other purpose. It seems therefore that Lindsay had been purposely lured to her death by people who wanted her dead. Although the nature of her death suggests a personal attack, the murder had clearly been planned with a certain degree of criminal sophistication. Jeff, I invited you back on because since we last spoke, a lot of people come up to me and they say, you know, they have their theories about the case, and they all say to me, "Oh, I don't trust the mom and the boyfriend. They were clearly had something to do with it." And I say, "Oh yeah, you know, what piece of evidence leads you to believe that?" And they say to me, "Oh, it's just something not quite right with them." And I think to myself, I would love it if, you know, I'm certainly not against that theory, but I would love it if there was more tangible evidence to connect. I don't want people leaving our last conversation thinking that, you know, we're just casting aspersions based on an unsettling feeling, because there is evidence in this case. So I want to be able to, you know, link our theories with grounded evidence if possible.
Well, I think if we had all the grounded evidence we require, there would have been arrests by now. I would hope, but dealing with Saanich police, who knows?
Yeah. The other thing, I guess, is in the last 2 years, it's been about 2 years since I spoke to you, isn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
I think I've kind of asked myself whether I investigated certain lines of inquiry as well as I should have. Because I'm about to get into it, but there's this idea of this drugs bust that happened around the time of the murder. And I don't know what it is about the drugs bust idea, but I feel like I kind of dismissed it out of hand straight away. And since we spoke, I've kind of thought to myself, maybe I should have lent more credence to that idea. Maybe I should have at least explained why I was dismissing that idea before I dismissed it.
Well, sure, I have no problem with that. Look, to set the record straight, I don't have any favorite who killed my daughter. I really don't care. I just want to know who, and I want them arrested, charged, and punished according to the laws of the country. We've been 12 and a half years here, and there's nothing. There's not even any suspects named by the police. Basically, police do nothing now. They've gone into silent mode. So, you know, I don't really care who it is. The popular theories are out there. There's many theories. I have my gut feeling about what went on as a father, and there's certainly like a ton of circumstantial evidence out there. So, you know, that's what we're dealing with right now. When people contact me, normally they've already got their theory in their mind of what they have, so they tend to ask me down a certain road, and that's where I go. because I stay open. I'm not locked in on any one theory. I stay very open. But what happens is many of the alternate theories that are out there go nowhere. They're just a theory, and they have zero evidence, as a matter of fact. So I'll go down any road anybody wants to go.
Okay, let's go down some roads then. I'm getting some of the information that I'm going to read out to you off the internet, and I don't know what is corroborated and what we know for a fact, what is just claimed, what is just complete misinformation that we know is false. So I'm hoping that as we go and as I pitch these ideas to you, that you'll be able to say, there's nothing in that, there's some truth to that, or whatever.
Sure.
So if I say something and you want to flag it, feel free to just interrupt me and tell me that's bullshit.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, but this is what I'd like to start with. On January the 22nd, 2008, so Lindsay was killed February 2008, right?
Yeah, February 2nd, that's right.
So on January 22nd, 2008, police uncovered 25 kilograms of cocaine from a traffic stop in Calgary, with police later uncovering an extra 65 kilograms of cocaine, along with millions of dollars. An investigation ensued which resulted in the initial arrests of Erickson Del Alcazar and Graham Scott Taylor, and 10 conspirators were later arrested in connection with this operation. So this is pertinent because it happens right before Lindsay is murdered, and also there's this idea that Lindsay visited you, Jeff, in Calgary the December before her murder, so about 1 month before the drug bust. During that visit, she contacted an old friend who was later implicated in the drugs bust, or at least had a connection to the drugs bust. And it's said that Lindsay popped out twice. That's a British phrase. She went out twice during her visit to see you, and we're not 100% sure where she went. So the drugs bust happened 11 days before Lindsay's murder. Lindsay has been accused by some of being the snitch who led to the fall of the Calgary operation. So there's this theory out there that she was killed in retaliation for this big drugs bust. First of all, how much of that did I get right?
Well, I'm not sure you have the exact dates right of the drug bust, but I don't know what they are myself. It started sooner than January 22nd. The situation is, yes, she came to visit me. One of the sole purposes of her visit was to discuss breaking up with her boyfriend, Jason Zailo. She was very stressed out about that and was something that she wanted to talk to me about. So that was one of the reasons, certainly the sole reason for the visit, besides just coming to see her daddy. And she did go out for dinner with friends for a very short period. And otherwise, we spent all the time together. Who she talked to while she was here, I don't know. Lindsay was a very popular young woman, so lots of people wanted to talk to her. She could be on the phone all the time, and since she was in real estate, obviously lots of people spoke to her, and whether they were all good people or not, who knows? I mean, I'm in real estate. I get calls every day. Do I know whether those are good people or not? Do I talk to bad people from Victoria? Sure. So does that mean I'm a bad guy or I'm involved with bad people? Come on.
Yeah.
Lindsay was out here solely for that. Now, the thing about this drug bust that I certainly look at closely is, one, we have no other evidence, not even circumstantial, not even reaching evidence. So it's hard for me to go down this trail. What I do know is that all the people arrested in that drug bust were offered a deal, and the deal was they get off without any charges or any record whatsoever if they gave the police information on Lindsay's murder, anything. And nothing out of all those people. I believe there were 14 people that were offered the deal. Some of them were young mums who had been transporting drugs that had young children. Nobody knew anything about it. So to me, that's kind of where it ends. Like, how do you go beyond that? You get, I heard it was 14 people who were offered clemency, if that's the right word to use, if they gave any information about Lindsay's murder, and there was nothing. And some of them were facing years and years in prison, which they did get sentenced to.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I find interesting about this whole drug bust thing is that the theory best I can get from the police is that these people got busted, and so they were getting heat from the cartel to take care of business, or we're going to come up there and take care of it. So in a panic, they thought, oh, what do we do? Lindsay was in Calgary, let's kill her. And so she was randomly chosen to kill to show the cartel that they were taking care of business.
Right.
That is so far-fetched.
But why would they think that Lindsay, what would be the connective tissue? Surely there were more people than just her in Calgary that weekend.
Obviously. It's just, I think it's a distraction.
Okay.
Police are just trying to lead people down the garden path. So, but not to be just dismissive of that theory, I've followed it as best I could. I've contacted or tried to contact people that were involved in that drug bust. Some of them I talked to, some of them I didn't. But, when you talk to people, no matter who it is, everybody says, I don't know anything. I wasn't involved. Of course, they're not going to say, oh, gee, sorry, I killed your daughter.
Yeah.
So, it's a pretty tough thing. But, I did talk to a couple of the heavier hitters in this drug bust. And, of course, they kind of scoffed at the idea.
Right.
They were like, what the And so, I got into heated with, certainly with one of them, and they were just, it's stupid. We know exactly who and why we got busted. And mainly it was one of the idiots involved was, starting to be Mr. Hotshot drug dealer. So he's out partying, causing a scene, leaves a nightclub and gets stopped by police. They open the trunk and there's 8 kilograms of cocaine sitting there and some drugs and money.
Right.
So, that's exactly what the guy told me. We know what happened.
But there is...
Why would we kill Lindsay?
But there is someone that spoke to the police, right?
About this drug bust?
That's what one of the... I think it was on Dateline where I was watching the sergeant... What's the sergeant's name?
Yeah, Horsley.
Horsley, that's it. I knew it was something like that. He was saying, we know that someone spoke to the police and that's what kind of led to this drugs bust indirectly, and that we know that person came from Victoria.
Right, and it wasn't Lindsay.
Right, yeah, sorry, I should have clarified. We know that it's not Lindsay.
Right.
Is it possible that it was someone who decided to pin it on Lindsay? For whatever reason, Lindsay was a convenient target that they could say it was this girl that spoke to the police.
Well, it's certainly possible that somebody could pin it. I mean, that's normally I'd have to say yes when I'm asked that question. Anything's possible.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, the people from Victoria involved have never killed anybody, and they're not, they're not capable of that sort of thing. Plus, when you look at Lindsay's murder, it's vicious and violent, the way she was stabbed and killed. It's personal.
Yeah.
If you get look at history from cartels and murders and all that. It's pretty quick and efficient. They just grab you and do what they need to do. This was set up like a ballet. It was set up by somebody who knows real estate. If you really look into all the details, I've been in real estate since 1980, so I know about real estate.
Yeah.
They used key terms about corporate transfer. They used the name of Lindsay's former client. This was somebody very close to Lindsay that was involved, and the way it was set up, it was almost over set up.
Yeah.
This isn't like a hit. A hit is somebody comes and kills you, not, okay, well, I'm going to meet you at this house, and, oh, my husband only has 2 days to find a house, and, all this craziness going on. It's like a little play.
I was listening to a podcast this morning that was talking about this case, and they were saying, so they obviously used a knife, which is the perfect weapon to use when you're trying to silence someone because it's, it doesn't create a noise and there's no forensics. And I was thinking, I've never heard a knife described as the perfect weapon to use for a hitman before.
No.
I mean, there's a reason why 99% of hitmen use guns.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if you're a real hitman, leaving forensics isn't the end of the world because presumably you don't live in the area, you're not connected to the people, so there's no reason for the police to trace that back to you.
Correct.
But I want to ask about the call, but just quickly before we move on. This friend that Lindsay went to see while she was visiting you, I mean, is that someone who went down for the drugs bust, or just someone who was connected, or what?
Neither. The friend she went to see was a friend she knew from preschool.
Okay.
And had stayed in contact with throughout their lives. The friend ended up living here in Calgary, not connected to that drug bust. So I know exactly what transpired. The friend picked her up. They went like 2 miles from my place to a restaurant. Another friend was there of this friend. And then they knew one of the workers at the restaurant, the sous chef or something. So they had dinner. It was about an hour and a half, and she came back.
So why is everyone reporting that he has a connection to this drugs bust? Is that complete misinformation?
Well, it's two different calls. So the other one was she did attempt to make a phone call or connect with one of these people from this drug bust, but according to police, that never happened.
Okay. She just rang them or something.
Right.
So and he was arrested, was he?
That's correct.
Okay.
So if you think of a social scenario, I mean, Victoria is a small place. It's not like some big metropolis. It's a little place. And if you're popular, everybody knows everybody, especially if you grew up there. And there's only like 1 or 2 nightclubs in town that you go to. So it's not what people think it's some big thing. It's not. It's like a little village almost. Okay. Not quite that small, but it's a smaller place. People know each other. I always claim it's 1 degree of separation in Victoria, and that's proven. It's not 7, it's 1.
Yeah, I'm trying to think myself, because you were talking about, the fact that you have a bad person's phone number or you're friends with them on Facebook doesn't necessarily. And I was trying to think to myself, yeah, do you know what? I probably do have some not very nice people in my phone contacts list, and I'm from quite a small place as well. So that to me is plausible.
Sure. Yeah, it's quite normal. As you're growing up, you meet all kinds of people in school and different things, and hey, some of them become professionals, other ones become bums and drug dealers. Yeah. So that doesn't mean you don't see them anymore or you don't contact them, especially if you live in a small place. I mean, they're still there.
Yeah.
They still say hi to you because they knew you when you were 8 years old because you were in grade 3 together, whatever it is. So what happened with Lindsay too is, we were in very close contact, and she would tell me sometimes, I got a call from so-and-so. He wants to talk to me about buying a house. And I go, yeah? Well, he's a drug dealer. What am I supposed to do? Well, I don't know. What do you sell houses? So if he's got a down payment and qualifies for financing or whatever it is, sell him a house. If that's what you want to do. If you don't, tell him, sorry, I can't deal with you.
And we know...
Now,
sorry, yeah, go on.
Well, everybody thinks, real estate money laundering, those 2 words. People think, they're why would you deal with them? Because, they're money laundering. Well, how do you know that? Like, all the blame for money laundering comes down to real estate agents. And that isn't where the blame lies. It's the lawyers where the problem is. And of course, the lawyers will never take responsibility for that. But realtors don't deal with money.
Right.
We do the deal. We write paper. We might take a deposit as a check. We don't take bags of cash. We don't take cash. And the money's transacted through a lawyer's office in Canada, not through the realtors.
Right.
The lawyers are the ones that transact it. So they accept whatever payment from the client, and then they transfer that payment to the seller's lawyer. So it has nothing to do with realtors.
We have no reason to believe that Lindsay is a little bit squeamish about dealing with drug dealers and being in that lifestyle. She's not involved in drug dealing or any kind of nefarious businesses like that.
She is not, and the police stated that clearly. They said she does not live that lifestyle. She is not involved in any illegal or criminal activity, but she knows people. Well,
right.
I know lots of police officers that know drug dealers. I know police officers who use illegal drugs. Lindsay was not that person. She didn't like drugs. She didn't like drug dealers.
Okay. That brings us to, I think, moving away from the Alberta drugs bust. Mm-hmm. This guy, the more I've thought about our last conversation, the more I think the most concrete bit of information we seem to have about this case is this guy Vid, right? Who we know carried the cell phone that was used to contact Lindsay to book the viewing.
What we do know is that the cell phone came across on the BC ferries to Victoria area the night before the murder.
Right.
And Vid met the cell phone or whoever was attached to it, and they went from the ferries to his place, and it stayed there.
And we know that because of Vid's cell phone?
We know that because of pinging off cell towers from both Vid's phone and the crime phone.
Okay. So that to me is the most concrete bit of information we have in this case, right? It tells me that whatever has happened here, Vid is involved or knows, or there's a connective tissue between Vid and whatever has happened here, right?
Well, it certainly appears to be that way. I mean, it's not 100% sure because, the ferry will unload 400 people. So
yeah.
Was it coincidence Vid was there at the same time? I doubt it. Was it coincidence the cell phone was at his place or very close to it? I doubt it. So, yeah, there's a connection there. Go ahead.
Why were the police why did they obtain Vid's cell tower information? What were they investigating him for?
Well, he's a no-good scumbag from Victoria who happened to be friends with Lindsay's ex-boyfriend. And again, it was a childhood connection. They're not buddies to this day.
Just to be clear, we're not talking about Jason now. We're talking about Matt McDuff, right?
Correct.
Lindsay's ex-boyfriend before Jason.
That's correct.
Okay. And so he's friends with Vid. There's also claims online that Vid is involved in the chain that comes from the Alberta drugs bust. Is there anything to that as far as you're aware?
Well, his association is with the De Alcazar brothers.
The De Alcazar brothers being people who, or some of them were arrested in connection with this Alberta bust.
Yeah, Erickson was the guy. Erickson De Alcazar. He was the idiot who got caught.
Right.
Being a goofball. Yeah.
So that tells me that there is a connective tissue. There is at least a connective tissue between what happened in Alberta and whatever Vid is involved in when he meets the burner phone. Or is it just an acquaintance? I suppose it doesn't have to be that Vid is involved in the planning. It could just be Vid is, considered that person's connect in the Victoria area or something like that.
Yeah, okay. We can look at it from different ways. You can grasp at straws and say, oh, okay, there's a connection, so it's the drug bust.
Right.
Or you can say Victoria's 1 degree of separation. Everybody knows everybody. So there's a connection no matter where you look.
Okay. Vid is, when we say Vid's house, we're talking about Vid's parents' house, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well, what the situation was Vid owned a house that he had his parents buy. They didn't have any money. He provided the dirty money. And so it was in their name because how does a drug dealer get financing or legitimacy when they have nothing but cash and drugs. So the home was in his parents' name. Okay. And Saanich police, in their brilliance, did search the home, but they forgot to search in the garden where Vid's mom hid his drugs and guns and cash and whatever else he wanted to hide.
Right. And so presumably if we can charge him on... Has he been charged with any kind of crime, drug dealing or anything?
I think he was charged a couple years ago with drug dealing, but he always gets off.
I suppose if we get him on one charge, we might be able to
Well, he gets off everything. And typically somebody who's never touched and gets off everything is because they're an informant.
Okay. I see what
That's why they always get off.
Let me try and draw some more connections here with... I've got to be honest, when I'm reading some of these theories, there are so many characters and so many different bits of connectivity that it's so difficult to follow, some of them. And obviously some of it is just nonsense, so I've tried my best to condense it into the most pertinent bits of connectivity that we can find in this case.
Sure.
I'm thinking... So Vid is connected to the Del Alcazar family. Vid is also connected to Matt McDuff, right? The ex-boyfriend. And Shirley Zailo is claiming that Lindsay told her very soon before the murder that she was afraid of Matt. A, does that make sense? Does that compute that she would be afraid of Matt? Or is that,
No.
Okay.
No, there's no truth to that at all. And Lindsay's girlfriends verify that. And I know Lindsay, she's not afraid of different people. She loved Matt, just for circumstances, their relationship couldn't work out.
It was 5 years, right?
Yeah, they were almost 5 years dating. She met Matt when she was 18, so...
Right.
Yeah.
Young alive.
So, yeah, no, there's no truth to she was afraid of Matt. Not at all. Matt was always there for her, and...
I have here that it says they hadn't spoken for months, and they'd been broken up for nearly 2 years. So that doesn't really speak to why would you suddenly be afraid of someone that you haven't seen or heard from in months or years. That doesn't really make sense to me.
And, Matt had another girlfriend who's now his wife and mother of 4 children. And Lindsay was well aware of that.
Was the idea that, because I've heard it claimed somewhere that she had told you that she wanted to break up with Jason and get back with Matt?
No, that's false.
Okay.
That's made up information.
So
what happened was, that comes from is when Lindsay came to visit me in our discussions, Lindsay told me at one point that I really miss Maddie. And I said, well, what? Do you want to get back together with him? She goes, no, it's over. That's done. I just miss the way it was.
Right.
The type of relationship we had when it was good. I just really miss that. So everybody's construed that into, she missed Matt and wanted to get back together with him. No, their relationship was done.
So you mean she used the memory of her relationship with Matt to recognize the holes in her current relationship?
That's correct.
Something like that.
It just, it wasn't there with Jason. She was very clear about that with me. There was just nothing there. It just wasn't working. There was no future. Okay.
So Matt is not a scary guy. Matt is a drug dealer, though?
No, Matt's a businessman. Him and his brother. He's done everything he possibly could to help and assist and fund and do whatever's required to find out the answers to this murder. He's very supportive. As a matter of fact, he phoned me 2 nights ago, upset and still wanting, why, who, we need to get to the bottom of this. He still questions it constantly, but of course his focus has to be his family, his wife, his children.
Yeah.
And he recognizes that and he stays loyal to that, but of course he's troubled by this Lindsay thing being unsolved. It angers him a lot because it's someone he was very close to, was in love with at one point. So, he'd like to see it resolved, and he would probably do anything he could legal to make that happen, as opposed to Jason, who's never done anything that I know of and does not ever contact me.
Well, in that case, sorry, Matt, then, for just announcing to the world that you're a drug dealer.
No, not at all.
Nice businessman, nice guy, wants to see this resolved. Okay. Let's go back to a different connective tissue, to vid, then. I have here, it says, in 2016, an anonymous comment was posted on the Lindsay Buziak murder blog. The comment read, "So, what did you think would happen to someone that tries to extort a drug dealer with major connections?" And this comment was apparently traced via IP address to a man named Avneet. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And Avneet is a friend of Vid's, it says here.
Well, they know each other, but again, 1 degree of separation.
Okay. Is Avneet anyone in this world as far as we can tell? Is he part of the drugs world? Does he know the Zailos? Who is he?
Well, he's a idiot who's some kind of gamer.
Well, clearly an idiot, yes.
Yeah, and does computer programming and married a Indian Bollywood star. And he just beaked off. And we traced him, and then he tried to deny it. But we had it exactly to him, to his office. And so he finally shut his mouth and disappeared.
But he never confessed that it was him, but we kind of know that it was him. It must have been him.
Oh, yeah, we know it was him. Yeah, we know it was him.
So that's odd. Does that again point to that he... I suppose we can't really conclude, therefore, that he knows anything. It could have just been a bozo comment on you see lots of these stupid comments about murder cases.
Well, it could be, and it couldn't be. We've taken Lindsay's case so public now that everybody's got a theory, and they spout off about it. So
yeah,
typically when I talk to them and try and drill down to what they know, because I get many calls from people who want to help and have information, but usually it's, they heard somebody say, oh, she got what she deserved, or stuff like that. And when we trace it down, it's just chat.
Right.
It's nothing beyond that. It's just people wanting to sound like they're authoritative on the topic and that they know something, but when in reality they don't. They're just big mouthing.
Okay, and that is certainly plausible as far as I can tell. I'm going to introduce another character now who is apparently one of Lindsay's friends, although, again, this is stuff I'm getting online. I doubt that all of this is true. You can separate the truth from the lie to the don't know in terms of this, but this is what I have written down here. There's a lady by the name of, again, I'm going to butcher the name, Rian Gracia.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that?
Yeah.
She was said to be dating Vid at the time of the murder. Vid is the guy that we know had the cell phone. Although she is also said to have denied that she was dating Vid at the time. Obviously, that gets into tricky ground. What is dating? I don't want to get into that too much. But Rianne is a friend of Lindsay's and worked as the receptionist for Lindsay's realtor firm. That is Shirley Zailo's realtor firm. It is said that she entered the D'Souza property into the computer system, so she was well aware of the house. It's also reported that she quit her job the day after Lindsay was murdered. Is all of that right? Is all of that wrong? Is some of it right, some of it wrong?
Well, some of it's truth, some of it's twisted to fit the scene. So Rianne was a very close friend of Lindsay's from school, grade school. Right. And Rianne went down a path that Lindsay chose not to be on. And but they stayed in touch. Lindsay's very loyal to her friends. And so later on, now Lindsay's working at Remax for Shirley Zailo. Rianne's now going to university. And so Lindsay got Rianne a part-time receptionist job at Remax.
Okay.
So they were friends, and Lindsay got her this part-time job. again, the whole dating thing with Vid, yeah, who knows what you call it, but they certainly knew each other, and they seemed to have a very close association at that time.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's Rianne. So, Rianne did, until she started getting accused, attend most of the walks for Lindsay. Very upset about the whole thing, and was actively assisting in trying to find out who killed Lindsay up until she got accused. So I don't know what's there. There's talk that she provided the info and she's all this and that. I have no evidence of that. Maybe the police do, but they're not saying. Rianne was very helpful and loved Lindsay dearly, and I don't know what to say beyond that. What else?
It sounds like your heart is telling you that you don't think that she would be involved.
Well, I'm having trouble believing that. I mean, there could be people that are involved that provided information unknowingly that led to Lindsay's demise.
Right.
So I can extend to that degree. I can't see any reason why, Lindsay would have been killed by something Rianne wanted to do. She loved her dearly. So I don't get that association. Rianne,
I guess the theories online are saying that she might be part of the mechanics of it, getting the information about the property, probably knowing some of this realtor lingo.
A little bit. She was part-time receptionist, so it wasn't like she was intimately involved with the workings of the real estate office. She was a part-time receptionist who answered the phone. And yes, okay, if she entered the information on the house onto the website, I can stomach that. I can understand that because I work in real estate, so I know how it all works. Receptionists are given tasks to do while they're not answering the phone.
Yeah. And
one of them could be entering information into the real estate network on a certain house. Sure, fine. But look at that a bit further if we want to look on that topic about information on the house. Shirley Zailo's boyfriend at the time, Paul Bergshoff, was best buddies with the owner of the house. Shirley Zailo had been at the house. Shirley Zailo socialized with the owner of the house. Shirley Zailo knew that house.
Right.
So which link is closer? Rianne, who maybe entered it onto the internet?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I guess the only the substantive thing that links Rianne is the only substantive thing that links Rianne is that she's dating Vid. Because otherwise she's just, a receptionist and she entered the thing into the database. That's nothing. Mm-hmm. But the fact that she's supposedly dating the guy that we, as far as we can tell, probably had the burner phone used to contact Lindsay in his possession or at his house, that is something. But it's also conceivable to me that it would happen with it. Even if Vid is involved, it would happen without Rianne's knowledge and input. But I guess it's something you have to be open to.
If we look at Vid, he's like the village idiot, is what Vid's like. People get some kind of idea he's some important drug dealer. No, he's a burnt-out, alcoholic, drug-using idiot that nobody really wants to have anything to do with, is what Vid is. And he wouldn't have the brains to probably put his pants on the right way if he hadn't done it his whole life. If you handed him something, he couldn't figure anything out. He's just a big mouth village idiot.
So Rianne doesn't have the best taste, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, but the general word is she wasn't dating him. So there seemed to have been some closeness there, but I don't know. Of course, Rianne claims she didn't have anything to do with him, wasn't dating him. And others say, no, she wasn't dating him. But, was she involved with him in some way intimately or whatever? Who knows? Who knows what people do behind closed doors? I've been surprised lots in my life.
Okay, I'm willing to move on from that line of inquiry. Then I want to talk a little bit about the woman who called Lindsay. It was the woman who arranged the viewing, isn't it? And then the husband phoned back at some point and said that it was just going to be him going to the viewing.
That's correct. The husband phoned, or the male phoned, and said that my wife's not going to be able to make it, so I'll see you there at 5:30, which to me is odd, being in the real estate business. Typically, nobody phones to inform you of whether somebody else is going to be there or not. Usually they just arrive.
Yeah, no, I did actually think that. I don't know why such information would be shared to Lindsay.
It was over-planned.
Yeah, that's what it comes across as, that it's you're alerting to her, if anything, to the fact that this isn't going to be a regular viewing.
That's right, and that was a concern of hers. She phoned me. It's like, Daddy, this guy just called me and said his wife's not going to be there. I said, well, don't go, or make sure somebody's there. I even said, do you want me to fly out there? No, Jason's going to be there.
And there's some debate online as to whether Jason was there as the muscle or whether Jason is there as he has some deal he needs to close. I don't quite understand the realtor talk in that scenario, but something about that he had some paperwork that he either wanted those clients to sign or wanted someone to sign.
No, there is no truth to anything except Jason was supposed to be there to protect Lindsay because she was concerned. That was it, period.
Oh, okay.
All the rest is bullshit. And that line about, there was some paper she needed to sign is bullshit made up by Shirley Zailo. There's no truth to that, because I even confronted her and I said, Shirley, realtors don't sign documents. Clients sign documents.
What did Jason say in his initial police interrogation?
Not too much, probably duh.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't have access to that.
So the phone used to make this appointment was activated on the 30th of January, and they called Lindsay on the 31st or something like that. Something happened in those 2 days. It was purchased far before, which suggests it was purchased in bulk, like operations normally purchase burner phones in bulk. Does that make sense?
We don't know anything about that, so I won't speculate on that. It was a burner phone. It was a phone somebody bought at a convenience store, and idiot Saanich police seemed to have fumbled that up by the time they got around to it, and there was no video, and they couldn't get any record, and the address used is not associated. Saanich police have an excuse for everything why they didn't do their job.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask about this. What exactly did Lindsay say about the voice on the phone? We know she's labeled them as the Mexicans in her phone, and she's written in her diary the Mexicans. So that's a nickname, obviously. But she said the voice was off-putting, or the accent was off-putting, or the tone was off-putting. What exactly has she said about the voice, either to you or to her friends?
Yeah, first and foremost, she never referred to the people as the Mexicans to me. And that picture of that diary, I think, is just a mock-up picture, as far as I can understand. Just like the dress thing is a mock-up. It's not an actual picture of the dress.
Yeah.
So she just said to me that, Daddy, the voice is a weird accent. It's kind of like Spanish, like Mexican or something, but it's not.
So she's saying that she's implying that it's a fake accent, is she?
That was the implication, yes.
Okay, because people online are drawing connections to, apparently there's some Mexican connection to the drugs bust in Alberta, and some people are saying, oh, this lady's Mexican, maybe it was her, or this guy has a sister who's Mexican. But I'm thinking to myself, but if it's a fake accent, then it doesn't matter, does it?
Well, it doesn't matter, and as I say, she never referred to anybody as Mexican to me. And also, I had somebody, a linguist and well-educated PhD, look into the name Paulo Rodriguez.
Right.
and it's actually Portuguese.
Ah, okay. Yeah, Rodriguez would suggest either Portuguese or not really Brazilian. Maybe.
Well, it's Brazilian. That's a common name in Brazil, and of course the Portuguese occupied Brazil for a period, so their language is a mixture of Portuguese and Spanish or whatever it is. So that's the name, Paulo Rodriguez, which was used to buy the murder phone, is this Brazilian Portuguese. And so the owner of the house is Portuguese. So, we can make connections everywhere.
Okay. The
guy next door to the murder house, Brazilian student at the time of the murder.
Am I right in thinking that it was a road full of new builds? So in terms of the owner of the house didn't actually live there.
Well, what the situation was, there is a well-established area in Saanich, and the De Souza family owned a larger piece of property there. So the builder, Joe De Souza, that was his mom and dad's property,
right,
where he grew up. So he subdivided it into smaller pieces or smaller building lots, and was building houses on it. And that was the first house he built.
Okay.
So it was sitting vacant. So he, or him and his siblings, whoever, owned the property and subdivided it in a well-established area. That was a finished house sitting there. And then he had another house under construction next door for a client.
So that would suggest that finding DNA and fingerprints at the property's probably pretty clean.
It should be very easy to find DNA and other evidence there, because Joe De Souza's wife had thoroughly cleaned the home the day before the murder.
I'm gonna ask you about DNA and stuff in a minute, but just one more question about this phone call to book the viewing. So Lindsay asked, "How did you get my number?" or something along those lines. And the caller referenced a client that Lindsay had previously sold the house to?
That's correct.
So presumably you've spoken with that client?
No, I haven't. I did try to make contact with them, and Saanich Police, of course, block people before I get there and tell them not to speak to me.
I see. Again, that is a definitive link, isn't it? That's pretty much the perpetrators or the organizers of the crime saying out loud, "We know this person." So
I think that says a lot. I think that's a real critical point right there.
Yeah, it narrows the world that these people live in.
That's right. So how could some, cartel guy get the name of a client that Lindsay had sold a property to? Like, not possible. That was somebody right in Lindsay's office. Was it Rianne? Knowing the inner workings of a real estate office, she would have to fall upon that. I don't see her ever having access to that. Was it Lindsay's boss? Yeah, absolutely. They sign every deal. They know who everybody is.
Lindsay's boss, Shirley Zailo, would obviously know that this deal happened, right?
Absolutely. And her assistant, her son, Ryan, and also Jason, because Jason was doing a mortgage broker at the time. He was licensed as a realtor and a mortgage broker. So he was providing mortgage financing for any of Lindsay's clients who needed financing to buy the home. Right. So he would have known all her clients' names.
That is an interesting lead. I would like to talk to that client and see.
Yeah,
but
so
then
would I.
Well, if the client has nothing to say in terms of connections to the characters that are supposedly involved according to some theories, then it speaks to someone from within Lindsay's office.
Well, sure, because here's the critical thing about this client is I asked Lindsay the question. I said, did they give you a reference? Yeah. Who? Well, one of my clients. I said, well, phone the client. She said, I did. And I said, so what'd they say? Well, they were away on holidays.
Right.
So somebody knew that.
I see, yeah. Yeah, that would suggest someone who knew that, wouldn't it? But then again, how would someone in Shirley's office know that a client they did business with 6 months ago is away on holiday?
Well, if you provided mortgage financing for them and you lived with the realtor who sold them the property, and
you got a better chance.
Your boss, which would be Mom, signed all the documents and made sure everything went through smoothly. Pretty easy to know who's going on with who.
It might be. I'd like to move on to the scene, if possible. I know we talked a bit about the scene last time, but in my scattershot approach, I probably missed out a lot of questions. Probably, if I remember correctly, about 2 years ago when I hung up with you, I immediately thought of hundreds of other questions I wished I would have asked you. Mm-hmm. Let me just first of all make sure this is the timeline as best we can figure it out on the day. 5:30-ish, Lindsay is seen by witnesses greeting the couple outside. 2 witnesses, I think. One person who went past in the car and another lady walking her dog.
Yeah, as best I can determine through my investigations and I spoke to one of the witnesses. They had a 1 or 2 second viewing. So what they saw was someone greeting 2 people, or 3 people standing there, and appeared to be a greeting.
Okay.
And there was no definite identification of individuals.
How definitive is the time?
The time seems to be correct.
5:30-ish, okay. And so we have the time also based on when Lindsay opened a lockbox? So that suggests that she's going into the house?
That's correct.
Okay.
So now, just to really muddy the waters. So we got witnesses that see 3 people. So we don't know who those 3 people are.
Right.
We have a lockbox that's entered, but that's entered with a keypad. So somebody has this little keypad device that they press in numbers, put it on the lockbox, and the lockbox opens. So was that Lindsay? We don't know.
Wait, so the number pad is on the lockbox?
No, it's separate.
Oh, that makes...
So you press in the numbers, and then you put the pad onto the lockbox, and the lockbox opens.
But is the pad at the scene at least, or where is the pad?
Well, we don't know where the pad is. The police don't tell me any information.
God, but you would have thought
they didn't even know the lockbox was electronic till I told them.
Oh God, that doesn't speak well to this investigation. But you would assume that pad would be a source that you would want to dust for fingerprints.
You would assume, yes.
Okay, that's at 5:30. At 5:39, Jason texts her and says, I'm a few minutes away. He's supposed to come to be the muscle, as we said. 5:41, Lindsay dials a friend who she hasn't spoken to in a long time. Police say this is thought to be a butt dial, and perhaps speaks to this being around the time of the attack. That she's fallen on her phone, or, that it's fallen out of her pocket or something. While she's being attacked. At 5:45, so that's 4 minutes after the attack starts, Jason arrives on the scene, and he reports seeing the couple in and around the front door / through the window, depending on which version of Jason's events you believe, and then they dart back into the house. So he says that he believes that this is when the viewing is starting.
Well, yeah, that whole situation is a bit goofy too, because I spoke to Jason, I spoke to Cone Oatman, who was with him, and more than once, and they both adamantly told me that as they turned the corner, and the house was a corner house, so they were facing it as they were turning the corner.
Right.
They could see some people through the opaque glass of the front door.
Okay.
Okay? That's their story. Over and over. So could you make out? Was there more than one? Oh, I don't know. Just like we saw movement of people. Both of them, same thing. They were adamant about that.
So they didn't see someone coming out?
Well, not according to their original story. So then, move forward to a show called Crime Watch Daily.
I'm a big fan.
We got Horsley on that show saying the people walked out the front door, and then as Jason and Cohen came around the corner, they darted back into the house. Yeah. Well, that was like stunning information when I saw the show. I was like, what the f***? Because up until that point, the story from Cohen Oatman, Jason, and the police was they saw people through the opaque glass in the front door. Now all of a sudden the police are saying they stepped out of the house and then darted back in.
Yeah.
I was like, who's giving false information here? Because, of course, Saanich police in their brilliance keep blaming social media for false information. And we actually tracked all their news releases, and they're the ones that are giving out false information because everybody's going off the information the police give.
Well, yeah.
And it's, yeah.
So when was that Crime Watch Daily show?
Well, it was, let's say, 4 years after the murder.
4 years after the murder. And so have you spoken to Jason and his friends since then and asked them why the story has changed?
Yeah, and basically it's talked to the police. So then, if you look at that, what you said to me, I'm just still dealing with that, is that Jason claims, he thought the meeting was starting.
Yeah.
Well, when, I'm in real estate. People are walking out a front door. How do you equate that to starting?
Yeah.
That would be leaving.
I guess it all depends on, I don't know how, I don't know how likely that is based on just the language that's being used. I mean, if he sees someone, opening the door and stepping out and then going back in, obviously that's you wouldn't have reason to believe that it's starting. If he just sees someone, closing the door behind them as they go in, maybe he thinks that the showing is starting and that, later he describes that as that he realizes now that they must have been leaving or something like that. It's all muddied in the way that people are describing the scene, I guess. But there's a huge difference between seeing someone step out of the front door and seeing someone through the window.
Exactly. So when I went to confirm all that, it was, they were stepped outside the front door. And I was like, how can you guys change the story? And it was, whatever. Like, they just brushed that over as if it's no big deal. Well, to me, it's a big deal.
That's 5:45 that happens. Then at some point, Jason moves his car from the driveway to a side road and texts Lindsay asking, "Are you okay?" Then at 6:05, Jason tries the front door, notices it's locked, which is said to be unusual, sees her shoes on the floor through the glass, and decides to call 911. So 20 minutes pass between Jason arriving at the scene and Jason eventually calling 911. That call is logged at 6:05.
Mm-hmm. So there's a contradiction there of human behavior, and I happen to have a degree in psychology from the University of Victoria.
Yeah.
So human behavior is typically very consistent, a pattern for individuals. So you got Jason arriving. Supposedly he's just there to drop off some documents. He's not worried about anything. Why would he say, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Why would you say, "Are you okay?" So then after that, Mr. Cool, who's, I'm just here to drop off some documents. Everything's cool. Why would you phone 911? That's emotional panic.
Yeah.
And Jason consistently claims, he's Mr. Cool. We're all affected in a different way. I don't get upset. And well, that's sheer panic phoning 911.
Yeah.
And this guy, you got to remember, this is a juiced up idiot, 6'3", 245, ripped.
Yeah.
And he's phoning 911 because he's worried. Like, come on.
You would know better than I do. Because when I read that, so 20 minutes have passed between him getting there, and he says he believed that the viewing was starting as soon as he got there. So it's starting at 5:45. And then at 6:05, he's calling 911. So only 20 minutes passed. That seems like quite a short amount of time to me. But maybe you could tell me, wouldn't it be normal for a viewing to take 20 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. But let's sort of back out of this whole scenario. So you've got a guy that's supposed to be there because your girlfriend's very concerned. And this isn't questionable. Like, she told me that numerous times and raised her voice at me. It's like, Jason's going to be there.
Yeah.
To protect her. So it's very clear that was what he was going there for. So he arrives there as a mortgage broker who had been providing financing for any of Lindsay's clients that required it. Do you not think that, okay, I'm here for protection and I'm here to get another mortgage client?
Right.
That he's not going to walk in, especially when you see somebody coming out?
Yeah. It would make sense.
Wouldn't you think, gee, something seems odd here, and I want to meet these clients?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me as to why he would sit in the car. I could begin to believe that, you know, maybe he feels like it would be awkward of him and overbearing as the boyfriend to go in. But then that doesn't then compute with 20 minutes later calling 911 in a panic.
Not at all. And especially when you were, you know, asked to be there because you're person you supposedly love, according to him, is very concerned about the showing.
So, as you said, it's just two types of behavior that contradict themselves.
Absolutely.
Sergeant Horsley says, on some this is probably from Crime Watch Daily, he said, "We know that Lindsay showed them the main floor of the home before heading upstairs." I don't know how he would know that.
I don't know if that's what Horsley says. Well, that's his story.
Other than some DNA evidence.
Right, it has to be some kind
that they were looking around
evidence that would indicate that.
Sorry, just to get back to Jason. Jason said that seeing Lindsay's shoes in the window is what alarmed him. Is that alarming? I would have thought.
Well, I don't think it's alarming. I mean, in Canada, certainly in Victoria, because I've lived in different parts of Canada. In Victoria, it's very common to take off your shoes when you enter somebody's home. And in the real estate business, selling residential real estate, it's very common. It's almost mandatory. Take off your shoes. And there was a sign there that said, please take off your shoes.
Yeah, so I don't quite understand. Maybe it's the fact that there are no shoes around Lindsay's shoes or something, but still, I think you would have to be hypersensitive to be alerted to some kind of danger based on seeing her shoes through the window. That bit doesn't compute to me.
Absolutely. And the whole door lock thing doesn't, make any kind of weird sense to me either. Being in real estate since 1980, and even now I only do industrial real estate. Typically, if I've opened up a property and show it to a client, if the client leaves, usually I lock the door, entry door,
right,
when the client leaves, and then I go around, shut off lights, and do whatever's required to secure the property again before I leave. So I don't want to be wandering around the property and have somebody else randomly walk in.
Right.
So I lock the door. And of course, when I started my career in real estate, I did residential, and that was what I did. Was when the showing was over, I would lock the front door. I'd go around the home, make sure all other doors were locked, the windows were closed. Because typically, a neighbor or somebody would walk in and go, "Oh, hey, do you mind if I have a look? Is this house for sale?"
Right. Yeah, I was thinking
by locking the front door, it avoids that.
In my naivety of how these types of deals work, I was thinking maybe she just locked it just to say, "Hey, look, here's how the door locks," or something. I don't know. It just doesn't strike me as that strange that the door would be locked. But then,
no, me neither. I mean, sometimes when you're showing, you lock the front door so that nobody else walks in.
Last time we talked, you raised some suspicions about the fact that Jason immediately ran up to the master bedroom upon gaining entry to the house. So as soon as he gets in, he runs straight upstairs, doesn't look in any of the downstairs rooms, runs straight upstairs and immediately finds her body. And that's according to his testimony as well. He says he headed straight to the body. And so the implication is, well, how did he know that the body is there?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. To me, that's very evident why he would do that he knew it was up there. I mean, why else? This is quite a large home, and he claims he'd never been in it before.
Yeah.
And not only did he enter and go straight up there, the story, according to Cohen, who was with him, says, as I was opening the front door, Jason pushed it open and ran straight upstairs to where Lindsay was.
I'm trying to understand could it be that he had just looked through all the windows and so he'd already on the ground floor, I mean, so you kind of already knew that Lindsay wasn't in any of those rooms?
I think that'd be reaching for an excuse.
Well, yeah, I am reaching.
Yeah.
What?
Like, it's a large home, and I don't know that they looked in every window. They went into panic mode, like, oh, the door's locked. Okay, well, you go that way, I'll go this way. And, let's try and find out how to get in here and phone 911. And, like, it was like sheer panic.
Yeah.
It was like it was part of the ballet.
So what?
Part of the play. What the script?
Let's assume then that him finding the body was part of the ballet. What is the implication? Is the implication then that he's been told we're gonna kill Lindsay and we're gonna do it in the master bedroom, and this is how you get to the master bedroom? Would it be as? I'm trying to think of in the situation where he's the ballet. Why it still doesn't explain to me why he immediately runs up to the master bedroom.
Yeah, just the only reason you'd run directly to there in a large home, and there were more than one bedroom up there, so it just doesn't make sense. Like there's a main floor, there's a partial basement, there's an upstairs. You run straight up the stairs, which when you entered the front of that home, to your left was the living room, to the right the dining room, some closets, straight ahead was the kitchen, and then off to the right, past the dining room and closets, there was a stairwell.
Yeah.
So your choice is going to be take the stairwell right to the master bedroom?
Yeah, it doesn't quite... Is it dusk at the time?
Yes.
So is the fact that it's dark in some rooms, is the light on in some rooms and not others? Are all the lights on?
I don't know.
We don't know. Okay. Assuming that Jason is part of the choreography, why is he, looking at it from the perspective of whoever's orchestrated this, why do I want Jason there?
Well, if we're speculating, one, because they would have known that he was supposed to be there because Lindsay told me that.
Right.
And two, he's got to pollute the crime scene.
Try and give her CPR, you mean?
Yeah, put his DNA all over, because at that particular time, it was challenging to differentiate DNA between family members. It's not now.
Right.
So whether the brilliant Saanich police have figured that out or not, we don't know.
Okay. That's a pretty good answer, I must say. I didn't think of that. So let's talk about DNA. You told me they recovered DNA, and then I was watching an interview with Sergeant Horsley where he said no DNA or fingerprints were recovered, and then somewhere else I saw they did recover DNA, but it was only Lindsay's. What is the truth as you know it?
The truth that I do know is that you can't believe anything Horsley says, because he's the one who puts out false information.
Right.
So whether he's doing that as part of his job, fine. I can go with that. But he does not tell the truth all the time.
Okay.
So whether there is DNA or not, I can't definitively answer that question. But I know they've checked the DNA that they have at least, or they've checked articles of clothing at least 3 times.
Well, they've asked Jason for a DNA sample, right?
Correct.
And he reportedly denied. So what were they going to check it with?
Exactly. Why would they want DNA if they don't have any to refer to? Why would they go to the expense of checking it at least 3 times if there was no DNA? What happens in BC, which sort of stands for backing crime, is in their brilliance there, when there's a murder or major crime, the authorities or the police are only allowed, I think it's 8 or 10 samples to be tested. That's it.
Right.
After that, they have to do it on their own privately, which to me is insane.
Yeah, ridiculous.
So that's how it works there. So Saanich police went beyond to test another couple times that I'm aware of. So obviously they're testing for something there.
I heard that the forensic evidence they have is footprint evidence and nylon fibers from the couple's feet. So presumably the woman was wearing stockings or something. And that is reportedly how investigators know, first of all, that they were shown the ground floor of the property, because presumably they have evidence of the footprints walking around the ground floor. And presumably that is also why the police are saying that they think they're speaking as if this couple were the two killers, rather than just the mechanics of the killing.
Yes. Now, I don't know about the nylon fibers. I've never heard of that. I do know there were footprints at the scene, and the police were going around after checking for women's shoe sizes.
Right.
And I believe they were checking for a size 10, which is quite a large
10 woman's
foot.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's quite a large woman. So
that is a large woman.
Obviously, large woman.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that's 100% true either. I was just told that they were going around checking women's shoe sizes at the Remax office.
Okay, I heard...
And not just the one Shirley was at, but at Remax in Victoria was owned by one individual at the time, Wayne Schrader, who would absolutely not have anything to do with me. He was like just a rude, arrogant...
Okay.
And I confronted him at one time and asked him about that, and he just sniffed at me and walked away. Just a...
Interesting.
So he owned all the offices. So there's, let's say, 5 in Greater Victoria.
Yeah. Which
Shirley Zailo manages one of them. So they were at the head office checking for foot sizes.
That is interesting. So, but presumably, if they have... I heard that... I don't want to be gossiping about this case, because then we just end up with more misinformation than we already started with. But I heard that there was someone writing a book about this case, and he was shown the case files, and that that's where the information about the nylon fibers came from, that he had read it in a case file.
Yeah. I think I know the individual you're speaking about, and I refer to him as the used-to-be guy, the pea collector, who claims he's going to be the ultimate authority on Lindsay's murder. He's a pea collector from Up Island. He goes around collecting pea samples from workers to check and see if they're using drugs. And he doesn't test them. He collects pea, takes it to a lab. That's all he does. He's a pea collector. And he used to be a police officer. So that's hence I call him used to be guy.
Right.
Now, he claims, like you say, that he had access to the file. Well, Saanich police won't give anyone access to the file because it would jeopardize the whole case. It would ruin the whole case if it ever goes to court. We randomly let this guy have a look. We randomly let that person have a look.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me look at it. The best I can determine was Dateline had access to certain parts of the file to do the show that was vetted by Saanich police.
Right.
So they're going to randomly give the file to a pea collector who is a used-to-be guy. I doubt it. I think Mr. Pea Collector is talking through his butthole.
Well, it's certainly unsubstantiated, say that. And the police don't really have a reason to give him the file. I don't see why they would be interested in this book.
Yeah. Well, why would they give him the file?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the most bizarre thing you could ever imagine. It's like, you want to see the file to write a book? Oh, okay. Like, come on.
Okay.
That guy I think he's drank too much of the peas collected.
Okay, I have one more question about the scene. Why this house? Why is this house selected as the place where this is going to take place? Who suggested the property? Did it come from the clients or did it come from Lindsay? Because Lindsay wasn't the realtor for this property.
No, but the property was listed through agents associated with Shirley Zailo. Shirley had been, according to Shirley, she had been offered the listing from Joe D'Souza.
Yeah.
She turned it down, and referred it to Lori Lidstone, who she knows well and knew her dad and that kind of stuff. So why the house was chosen, I can only speculate why it was chosen, but I can speculate on that question.
Yeah, please.
So in discussions with Lindsay, the description that the woman used for the type of house they required, there was only one, and that was it.
Right.
So they narrowed the description down that this particular house fit and no others. And Lindsay was troubled with that. She's like, Daddy, what am I going to do? I can't find anything else, just this one house. And I said, well, you better find something else. Like, find something else that's close or at least is a comparable in some way.
Right.
So that they at least have a choice to say, well, no, we told you we need this, and that's the only one. Well, okay, that's the one you have to buy. It's pretty easy.
Were they going to see other houses? I feel like I read somewhere that they were going to go see 5 other houses.
Well, I don't know about 5, but I know they were going to see another one in Oak Bay. I spoke to the agent and of the other house and said, they didn't show up. But that was through my discussion with Lindsay. She's like, what am I going to do? I said, well, show them something else. Like, find something that remotely fits. You can't just take a client to one house. I mean, you can just go, here's your house. This is all there is.
Yeah.
But typically clients will lose confidence in you if that's all you do.
Right.
So I said, show them something else. She goes, well, what? I go, well, I don't know. Find something. So she did. So who suggested or whether she found it, I don't know for sure. But knowing Lindsay, she would have talked to different people about, I'm trying to find this house. What do I show them? So whether that was other realtors or whether it was her boss or that they decided that was the house.
But is there again, I'm not asking you to speculate if you don't want to, but is there a benefit to using this house from the perspective of whoever orchestrated this that I'm unaware of? Is it easy to escape from? Is it because it's so clean and no one lives there? Well,
the only thing I can add to that is that it's a known commodity. So it's a house somebody had been in, so they knew what it was like inside.
Right. No, I think we all get where you're going with that.
Who would that be? Yeah. I mean, why else would you use it, right?
Yeah. It would have to be someone. I mean, if it's someone orchestrating this from Calgary, they're unlikely to have enough confidence in some house that they've never seen being the setting for this massive display, whatever this turned into, a complete mess.
Right. So you're trying to tell me some, sometimes I just shake my head when I hear, the bumbling Constable Horsley squawking about, oh yes, this is a cartel. It's like, come on. Some cartel from Mexico who hangs people from bridges are going to come up and do this ballet in a house in Gordon Head. Like, get out of here.
Yeah. Well, this is I guess there's a reason why this crime is unlike many that I've ever read about. And I'm sure you could find a lot of cartel crimes to compare with this one, and you're not going to find one that fits what happened here.
The cartel want you to know it's them. They want you to know what they did. They display that. They let it be known this was us. They put a mark on you. Like, come on.
Yeah, it makes sense.
This is an excuse. So if you wanted to hide something, if there was a cover-up, or you're just plain stupid and you don't know how to solve a murder, what's the easiest way to get out of it and who to blame? Oh, cartel.
Yeah.
We can't go to Mexico. We'll be killed. We can't go there. Who do we arrest? Good excuse for not solving a murder. Oh, it was the cartel. It's like, off.
Yeah, you see it in a lot of these cases where someone will present, human trafficking or drug cartels or something, and I always think to myself, it's such a tenuous, it's almost kind of blaming ghosts at times.
Exactly. Right. Good excuse for not being able to solve a case because you're either incompetent or trying to cover up.
Yeah.
Oh, it was the cartel. Who's that? Oh, I don't know. Some big organization, secret, in Mexico, so, we could solve it, is what they're implying.
I've got one other small thing to ask you about just before we leave.
Mm-hmm.
There's this thing that I didn't ask you about last time. Some months after the murder in 2008, one of Lindsay's friends named Nikki reported receiving a phone call in the middle of the night from an unknown number from someone who had a strange accent, so I guess they were talking on the other end. When the caller hung up, Nikki called the number back dozens of times, maybe 30 times. The caller eventually picked up the phone, and who's on the other end but Shirley Zailo? I don't even know what to make of this story. Just sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, actually, it was very early morning. Lindsay's friend was a cocktail waitress at the time, so of course she worked late hours, so she's sleeping, and she gets an early morning call that wakes her up, and the rest, she got into panic. She got alerted as she laid there and go like, what the hell was that all about? And it's like, oh my God, same call Lindsay got. And then she got angry. And so she started calling back, and eventually Shirley answered. Yeah.
So when she says the person on the other end had a strange accent, presumably the person on the other end is talking to her, saying something?
That's correct. Yeah.
What was the caller saying to her?
She was unclear about that. Whether it was just questioning, she's waking up. She, what are you talking about? What's going on? And then they hung up.
No, I understand. And so the mere fact that the person had a strange accent, she kind of connected that with what Lindsay had said. Because obviously none of us heard the accent that Lindsay heard, so it's hard to connect that.
So, in defense of Shirley Zailo,
yeah, no, someone has to.
I spoke to her about that, and this goes back to Rianne and answering another question. Shirley said that she was calling Nikki, who was the office manager at the head Remax. And I did confirm that. Her name is also Nikki.
Ah, okay.
Because their receptionist didn't show up at Shirley's office, so she was phoning Nikki to get a replacement. I said, okay, well, why would you have the other Nikki's number in your phone? And she said, well, Jason must have put it in there. And I go, why would Jason have your phone and put one of Lindsay's friends' name in your phone? And she said, well, when he got out of the police station the morning after the murder, the police kept his phone and clothes and all that stuff. So he had my phone, and he was with two of Lindsay's girlfriends.
Okay.
So, okay.
That's plausible.
So then later, Shirley told the girlfriends to keep their little f***ing mouths shut, or you know what'll happen to you. And she sliced her finger across her throat.
Interesting. That's an interesting thing to say to someone.
That'd be a very interesting thing to say. Especially a woman who walked up to me on first meeting. Do you f***ing know who I am?
Yeah, maybe that's just the way she makes friends.
Interesting. From a psychological point of view.
Okay, so how do we then? Is Shirley then saying that she? Sorry, go on.
I just want to answer that other question about Rianne.
Oh yeah.
Everybody says Rianne quit.
Right.
And that particular word has a psychological impact. And in defense of Rianne, I don't like to use the word quit. What happened, according to Rianne, was she was so upset about Lindsay's murder and knew who did it in her mind. She just didn't go back to work because she was scared.
Okay.
So she didn't officially quit. She knew about Lindsay's murder, of course, that night, and she quickly speculated in her mind who did it. So she just didn't go in the next day and thereafter, and never called or anything.
And I guess if I'm reading between the lines of what you're saying, I guess if she's casting those aspersions on people to you that that it's unlikely then that she would be involved in that. If they are indeed involved, she wouldn't be saying, "Oh, it's these guys." It speaks to her not being involved.
And she stayed at home in lockdown for quite a while after,
right?
Scared, like most of Lindsay's girlfriends, petrified that they're next.
That's annoying. So what is her... Are you still in contact with Rianne now?
No, I'm not. We were very close until people started accusing her. And, of course, a lot of that goes on the Lindsay Buziak murder website. So Rianne discontinued contact with me.
Okay. What does the case look like now? Because I kind of have this idea. I have kind of two ideas of how this case is unfolding. First of all, I have this idea of you at your desk ringing people, knocking on doors, asking them, what did they hear? And I heard you were connected. And then I have this other idea where there's just nothing happening and it's just completely at a standstill and there's no movement. Is there any movement in this case?
Well, I don't know if there's movement as far as Saanich Police because they don't tell you anything. And I finally basically have more or less written them off as useless. So we have very limited contact. I do share information with them, though, because I have no choice, because they're the authority that control the file and refuse to give it up to anybody else. So they are doing stuff that I know that I force upon them and keep them accountable to. Whether they take it anywhere, I have no idea. But as far as what I'm up to is, yes, I work. And yes, I do other things in life. I've been camping this summer, hiking, bicycle riding, motorcycle riding. So I try to live as normal a life as I possibly can.
Yeah, good.
But Lindsay is weighing on me every day, all the time, day in, day out. I'm answering emails, messages, texts, phone calls, daily. Yeah. It's nonstop. I get information. Sometimes it's good information. Recently had somebody that said someone else confessed to involvement. So I was on to Saanich Police about that. I followed up. They were too lazy to go talk to the person, so they had somebody else go talk to them. So it's a daily thing with me that I intermix with my life. It's nonstop. Another thing that I haven't released, so you're getting breaking news here.
Oh, good.
Is through the persistence of a couple really fabulous supporters who have been with me for years and years and years, especially one of them. There was contact made with a retired FBI gentleman who had a TV show. He works with a team working on Unsolved. That's become his retirement hobby, so to speak.
Okay.
The volunteers had been on him for at least 2 years to look at Lindsay's case. And so he finally made contact and said, yeah, I've looked it over. I'm interested. So he was put in touch with me. We had discussions. And, of course, he said, yeah, I want to have a go at the case. So
Brilliant.
He said, but I need to speak to the police and I need to have access to the file and cooperation with them and access to interviews. He's a big behaviorist.
Right.
So I made that contact with Saanich Police to inform them of this, put the two parties in contact with each other. The very first thing Saanich Police did was exclude me from all further information and made the gentleman agree to that, that I cannot receive any information whatsoever of any kind. So I do know that the gentleman wanted to work on it. He's an FBI decorated expert with a TV show. And I was partial to the communication initially, and it was offered to Saanich Police that this gentleman and his team would go at the file, go at the case, and investigate it. And if Saanich Police alternatively wanted to deal directly with active FBI members, that he would put them in touch with the people who could help Saanich Police from the FBI, which is United States authorities.
Right.
And that was the point. I got totally blocked from any further.
You got ousted.
Yeah, I got ousted. I asked both. I asked Saanich Police and I asked the FBI gentleman who I'd been in contact with after, because he told me that they made him agree to no further contact. So I contacted him and said, can you at least answer the question, are you working with them or not? And he said, I can't answer that question according to the agreement. I asked Saanich Police, and they said, we do not release any information about who we're working with, although they seem to now say they work with the RCMP. So anyhow, that was offered to them. Whether they took it or not,
well, let's
we
keep
don't
our
know.
fingers crossed. Presumably,
these are absolutely experts in the world.
That's what we need. Presumably, if they didn't give him access to the files, then there is no agreement to stick to.
That's right. And if, in my mind, if you can't solve a case and you have the absolute authoritative experts in the world that want to help you, and if you turn that down, you're hiding something.
I find it ridiculous that they're still claiming that they're investigating this case as if they're following up leads. Because
well, what they're trying to do is they try to keep a good image because, of course, I'm beating them up publicly, which they so deserve. And so they use terms and phrases to psychologically mislead people. And remember, I have a degree in psychology from a recognized university.
Yeah.
So what they do is they say, this case is a high priority for us and we have officers actively investigating this case. Well, that's a pretty open-ended statement. And what it actually means is the file's not officially termed cold.
Right.
And that information that comes in that they deem interesting, they'll send an investigator, or they'll ask somebody else to, in the last case, to investigate it.
And so
they're not sitting there with officers working on it on a daily basis.
No, of course not.
Their latest thing was they had the bumbling constable Horsley chasing a snake in Saanich. So, come on. You got Canada's most known unsolved murder on your desk and you're chasing a snake?
Yeah.
That got loose? They're just bumbling idiots.
The wrong kind of snake.
Well, it's probably because they're very familiar with how they operate.
Yeah. Well, I will definitely have my fingers crossed about that FBI development. I'll try and look out for that. Where should people keep up with the case? Tell the folks at home where they should go to hear updates.
Well, the only place you'll get updates is LindsayBuziakMurder.com or my Facebook page.
That's all one word, Lindsay Buziak Murder.
That's correct.
And
.com.
I know the spelling might be difficult for some people, so just look in the description, or it's Buziak is, sorry, I should say Lindsay as well has different spellings, so it's Lindsay, and then Buziak is Buziak. LindsayBuziakMurder.com. I will be keeping a lookout. I always keep a lookout. I think about this case a lot. I hope you know you're always in my thoughts, Jeff.
Thank you very much for your support. I really appreciate it.
I'm really hoping that one of these days I'm going to be emailing you saying, do you want to come on the podcast and celebrate that we finally got these guys?
We will be doing that, Ben.
I very much hope so. I hope it's soon.
Yeah, me too.
I hope I won't have to blow the dust off my microphones when we do that.
Me either. Yeah. Or relearn how to use Skype.
Other than that, it's just good talking to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Jeff. Bye-bye.
You as well, Ben. Take care.
If you have any information, regardless of how small, in relation to the murder of Lindsay, please get in touch with Jeff. You can find his information on LindsayBuziakMurder.com, or you can forward your tips directly to Saanich Police. tips@saanichpolice.ca. tips@saanichpolice.ca, and there's a double A in Saanich. or you can forward your information to the Hoopers podcast and I'll forward it along to the right parties.